Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual businesses and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Hopefully, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And before I introduce the panel, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and they make great coffee. I always like to say that every week, by the way. Anyway, so let me introduce you to the panel. We have Chris Creed, CEO of Creed Foodservice. They employ 400 people across 3 locations. Turnover last year was 63 million. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. We got Peter Miles, MD of Forge Engineering, Forge Motorsport, based on Bristol Road. There are 54 staff in the UK, 5 in the UK, 5 in Taiwan, and a turnover around £6.5 million. So welcome, Pete. We have Michaela Stafford, Associate Director of Hazelwood's Accountants Business Advisors, turnover of 30 million, employ 400 staff as well across 2 sites. He's an insolvency expert, new on the show as well. Hey, Nick, very nice to see you. And finally, last not least, we got Michaela Cozens, Operations Director at Gloucestershire Enterprise. They have 25 in the group, established over 21 years. They normally train around 1,000 people a year. Pre-pandemic turnover was 1.1 million, down around 400,000. But hey, we've all been hit like that as well. Anyway, welcome to Punchline Talks, the Business Breakfast Briefing Show. Let's get on. We're just going to review the morning newspapers. So I'm going to share the screen courtesy of the BBC. So what have we got? Making the headlines today, the Daily Express, Defiant Trust will rip up Brexit border deal. The Eye, Lords tried to delay Trust from tearing up Brexit pact. The Daily Telegraph, Frost, MP must be brave out over the protocol. The Guardian, US team flies to amid fears over Northern Ireland. The Sun, Sheen's Dame Debs, very sad story, but inspirational at the same time. The Daily Mail, 51,000 civil service jobs will be axed. The Times, Tories risk losing next election, says Hunt tells the MP. The Daily Mirror, the home of UK's worst COVID lawbreakers. The Metro, shot in the back, this terrible story about another one in the Ukraine, some atrocities there. The Financial Times, well, a whole mix of different ones, really. Where to start? Let's say Pink Floyd set for 500 million deal. I'm a bit of a Pink Floyd fan, actually, if you want to know the truth. And the Daily Star, keep your hair on. This is a tribunal which decides calling a man baldy is sexual harassment. There goes a lot of jokes in the workplace, but let's move away from that for now. Okay, let's start with you, Michaela. What have you picked out in the papers today, please?
What I've picked out, Mark, I'm going to cheat slightly because it was in yesterday's papers, but it resonates to something that is happening today. So in the news of 91,000 civil servants going to be axed across the country. Skills, I'm bound to talk about skills. It's what we do. But yesterday there was quite an article in the Times, which is the Times Education Summit, picking up on the PwC research that is looking at the skills for the future. I mean, it's going to probably really transform the way schools might operate in the exams and curriculum that they teach, but it's about businesses and what we've all gone through in the past 2 years. I know some industry sectors are really struggling to recruit people with the right skills. And what we're seeing now, and it was actually quite reassuring to see that in a bad sort of way, but PwC saying that actually businesses are really experiencing a shortage of skills from actually quite straightforward things like problem solving, time management, leadership, resilience. And we've been tested in the past 2 years during the pandemic, but that's not over. We're still going to be operating in uncertain times. Supply chains are being hit by things that are going on in Europe. You know, obviously there's the war and sort of obviously we've got the fuel aspect that is going to then put prices up, etc. So businesses have got to re-engineer the way they operate business, probably retrench, but change is going to be a constant now. And one of the key things is actually upskilling and reskilling employees. yes, it starts back in the school, and these 91,000 civil servants that are going to find themselves outside of the government are going to possibly need to reskill themselves to go into a commercial organisation.
It's funny you mention this, Michaela, because every single business person I talk to at the moment, it's all about the staff, it's all about personnel. They just cannot find the people. We know the hospitality trade in particular is particularly hard. Is that what you were finding as well, Chris? Just bringing you in on that quickly.
Well, I mean, obviously we're not in hospitality, but we're obviously have a lot of operational staff and drivers, and we're okay. I mean, we are probably 20 or 30 people short of where we should be, but it is becoming more and more difficult to employ people. Yeah.
And it's the young people. It's the soft skills that we all take for granted. I remember we had a young lad who was fantastic, but could he actually make a telephone call out, or was he confident to actually receive a telephone call? You know, we took a lot of training to make that happen.
I think the pandemic has also shone quite a spotlight on skills. You know, we've seen actually the leaders sort of step up to the plate during the pandemic, and innovate and be creative and work from home and be independent, be resilient. But this is about saying, well, okay, now people are being asked to maybe operate in a hybrid sort of way. Then actually it's those soft skills, the people management skills, to supervise and manage and lead businesses by embracing all that, the change and the hybrid nature of the way we're going forward.
Because it's difficult to manage staff anyway, let alone you're going to do the two different ways. That's what you're saying then.
Yeah.
You know, tough gig, isn't it? Well, anyway, okay, thanks ever so much for that, Michaela. Chris, what have you picked out in the papers, please? Or online? I
was just looking this morning, and I picked up the story about Cranswick Foods and the recall of the chicken products from supermarkets. And I find that fascinating because, you know, coming from the industry and understanding how much we are all audited and checked and testing and all that kind of stuff, even from just a warehouse point of view, to have a plant like this, which must be so highly controlled in terms of testing for bacteria and other bits and pieces, to actually have to find salmonella in there, I just find it absolutely incredible.
Because there's a number of different shops, isn't it, that's affected, isn't it?
Yeah.
The co-op,
all the major supermarkets, Pret, M&S,
How much are we talking about here, Chris?
Well, I mean, they've basically withdrawn most of their product. So over 100 products. Wow. They've withdrawn because they found an element of salmonella in the factory. They just have to withdraw it, whether those products were actually contaminated or not. But I think what the other thing it does goes to show is how safe our food is in this country generally. You know, because they test so many times, that I think that it just goes to show that all of that testing does work. And although it's inconvenient for people and for these and for Cranswick and for these retailers, it shows that we have got the safety measures in place in this country to stop people getting ill. Yeah, most food poison doesn't happen from outside in kitchens and stuff. It happens from the home. It does, yeah. Because unfortunately, this MP really caused a storm this week saying that most people can't cook. The truth of the matter is, a lot of people can't cook and don't know the different rules, and you know, cook meat next to raw meat and all this sort of malarkey. Chris, have you got anything else there that you picked out very quickly? No, that was I've got a punchline one. Do you want to do that now or later? Save it for the punchline. Okay, that's me done. Okay, no worries at all. Pete, let's go to you. Thanks ever so much for that. Chris, Pete, what have you picked out? Nice to see you, man.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear about the sort of the food problems, and also sort of the retraining. And then I think for me, I picked up on something in the Times, which was, I had to get the Times because I didn't realise the Daily Sport wasn't available anymore, because I always thought that would be quite funny to review that. But so yeah, that shows you the last time I bought a paper, it was probably the Daily Sport when I worked at Datis 20 years ago. But I think it comes down to certainly for us with some interesting sort of supply chain and the challenges that COVID and the pandemic around it, the ability to make sure our business and other businesses have more than one egg in the basket. And I think in sort of a leadership role, we've within our company, we've been pretty fortunate that I can't say it was any great planning, but we've worked quite hard over a number of years to have 2 or 3 different suppliers. And then just to read that chip shortage sends Jaguar into the red. It just sort of shows how even huge companies like Jaguar can get a little bit one-tracked with your supply chain. So I understand sort of Audi and VW have huge problems as well, with a lot of chips being manufactured in Ukraine. And certainly within our industry, build dates for certainly new Audi RS3s and S3s are out past 24 months now, and then possibly no end in sight. So the sort of the necessity to concentrate on your supply chain and the fundamentals that allow you to keep trading. Yeah, that was a big red flag for me today.
It's funny, Pete, just to throw this into the mix as well, because there's a story in the Times today about the Russians and how they don't have enough chips to put in their tanks. Yeah. And so what they're doing is they're bastardizing or using dishwashing machines, washing machines, and taking the chips out of there in order to use in their tanks, which obviously they're not the right type of stuff. Anyway, but no, you're dead right. Of course, they've been bombing the Ukraine. Of course, that's where they used to get a lot of their manufacturing stuff from.
Yeah, it's crazy as well. I've got a friend who's in the garage roller shutter door industry as well. And apparently 90% of all garage roller shutter doors and doors for industrial buildings come from Belarus. And if there's a massive shortage this happening with that. So yeah, that was interesting. I had one more here because I know Chris and I have done a couple of business courses with a company called Quolux in Stuart Barnes, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on with sort of culture and making sure you're working the right way. And there's a word in the Anna Treeman notebook that she comes up with a word of the day, and it's called honey fungal, honey and then fungal. And it means the ability to swindle, dupe and bamboozle with the intention of cheating or trickery. Without getting too political, yeah, who'd vote for anyone today? Because I think looking at the people around this room, there's leadership is essential in what you do. The way you treat your people, the way you represent yourself is key to having a good business. So yeah, honey fungal. I'd honey fungal Mr. Keir Starmer Smith and the lovely Boris, because a complete lack of leadership going on right now, and it comes from the top. That's me done.
Okay, thank you very much for ending on a political note as well. No, good stuff. Thanks ever so much for that, Pete. Nick, welcome to the show. What have you picked out, mate?
Okay, so a little bit like Peter says, I haven't bought a paper in a little while, but I got the eye today. So and because it's been a little while, it cost 70p, and I swear the last time I bought it, it cost 30p. So just to show how long ago I bought a paper. But my article from the Eye is it's actually a little bit personal related as well, because last night myself and my wife were sat down watching telly, and we couldn't agree on what to watch. So we loaded up Netflix and couldn't find anything that we both agreed on. My wife wanted to watch Bridgerton, but I ruled that one out. Then we put on Disney and couldn't agree on anything, and eventually settled on something on Sky. But this article, it's all about a new super subscription that is going to be offered with a tie-up between BT and Discovery Plus for a new subscription service. And it says the value of the deal that they've done is £633 million. And it goes on to basically say that the content that the BT has, you'll be able to watch the Olympics whilst also watching every Champions League game, and then binge watch the new Game of Thrones series that will be coming out soon. And it just made me think that you know, the situation the economy's in, and everybody's own pressures that they have on their own budgets, having all these separate subscription services with the backdrop of what's happened to Netflix recently with their boom during COVID, and then they've just published figures showing that they've lost 200,000 subscribers, and that's forecast to potentially continue. Just whether we've reached saturation point on some of these subscriptions, and whether, you know, individual budgets, households have actually got the stomach or the money to be able to pay for another subscription for something else for the viewing pleasure. But it also, the article then goes on to make various other references, and it's got a picture of Matt Smith as a Targaryen. But it goes on to say about the Olympics as well. And one thing I didn't realise was that the BBC actually gets the coverage for the Olympics through a license through Disney Discovery Plus. So, but they promised that that's going to continue. So that's good news. But it then goes on to make comment that have we really reached the kind of the peak buying power of some of our sports, or whether that's actually going to come down over the next few years. So yeah, just another service for us to subscribe to if we want to have that content going forward.
Well, I'm glad that you've been an accountant, that you mentioned money. It's always a good way to start. And I'll be honest with you, I think we have. People are going to look at their budget. They can't afford stuff. And what are you going to do if you've got 5 different types of cable? Let's quickly go around the panel, actually. So who's got cable? Start with you, Michaela.
Oh, sorry,
Start with you. Do you have Netflix? You know, do you subscribe to any of the cable stuff? And which ones?
And we do have Netflix, but I'll be honest, we're probably of a different demographic, that we're more used to sort of Sky and recording and then streaming it when we want, rather than live streaming on demand. Okay. But iPlayer and ITV Hub, great when you're on a treadmill. Just stick it up there and watch another little program while you're pounding away.
Treadmill? What are you talking about? Okay, Pete, which ones have you got? Have you got any?
Well, we certainly haven't got cable because we live out towards the forest, so we've got like a mouse on a dyno running our electric. But we've got the bloody lot. We've got Apple TV, we've got Netflix, we've got Sky. My kids have not long, although they're getting on a bit, not getting on a bit. They've not long left home, so while they were there, they had everything, and we
got the whole lot.
Devour everything that comes on. Yeah, Nick, I really recommend Ozark on Netflix. Get into that. Banging program.
Okay.
So what do you have, Chris? Do you have any cable stuff?
Yeah. Well, recently having young grandchildren and them coming back quite. So we pretty much have the lot. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cool. We have enough. I got to recommend the show actually. It's on Netflix called Cable Girls. It's in Spanish and it's absolutely fantastic. But then I like the foreign stuff. But anyway, okay. Quickly moving on. So I can't remember where we're at now. We've done the papers, haven't we? Yes, we have. Yeah. That's the whole. I've completely lost my
Friday, Mark.
Yes. Anyway, let's go over to you, Michaela. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your own individual business sector, but if that's okay. Mm-hmm. So, Gloucestershire Enterprise Limited. So the company itself, you train all these people. Mm-hmm. What's it been like since you've come back from the pandemic?
Interesting, actually. Yeah, we managed to pivot all of our training online, just like everybody did during the pandemic. But because all of our learning is very much employed people, adult learners, we were limited in the way that face-to-face training could happen. However, interestingly, now face-to-face training is back in demand. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say we still need to offer online solutions. Because at the end of the day, when people get pinged or test positive, we've got to enable people to join online remotely so that they can continue. Since we've come back sort of more properly this year, I think it's fair to say that individual companies are now seeking to train groups of their staff. In-house training seems to work, and that's because they can bring their people back together and have sensible conversations about how things need to work in the future. And basically sort of peer support is great when you're in a company. You don't often get those down moments to speak to your sort of fellow managers. But the thing that I suppose leadership is all through a company, isn't it? Right from your team leaders, your supervisors, your middle managers to the top. And everybody is crafting new ways of managing their teams. And one of the underpinning values really of a high performing team is trust. And I think there's nothing more important, having come through the pandemic, is this trust factor, isn't it? Now, when people are working remotely, just because you can't see your colleagues doesn't mean that they're not working. So it's having that confidence as a manager to know how to interact with people who are maybe not in your line of sight. Yeah, so
and I can see how the group thing would work, because a lot of companies are looking at ways to retain staff.
yeah,
And also, if you train together, then you're bonding them.
yes,
Another way of bonding together, isn't it, as well? And they, all.
Yeah, so I mean, we've existed for 21 years ago. Kevin set up the company. The core business is all about leadership, management, and business skills. Business skills being things like, you've got your technical capabilities like project management, coaching skills, some of the HR topics, some of the sales topics. Actually, IT skills have always been incredibly popular. The power of Excel is quite phenomenal. But it also, the qualifications are a little bit of a give back. So if you're seen as a leader to be investing in your staff, and your staff are then having that confidence that they have achieved a qualification, more people, particularly the younger demographic, are looking at, well, what is my company doing for me? And I think it's not just investing in equipment and technology, but invest in your people, because your people will take you forward. It's having everybody on the bus, isn't it, and following you.
No, that's fantastic. It's really, really interesting. Thanks ever so much for that, Michaela. And talk about leadership and growing a company, that leads a very nice link over to Chris.
Hello.
Hello, right, Chris, Creed Catering. The other day we ran a story on you guys. You had a fantastic looking event. You invited me along. I'm very sorry I couldn't make it. Do you want to tell us what that was, please? Yeah,
we're just trying to engage our customers with our suppliers. We have probably a lot more niche suppliers of smaller companies, newer products, and really introducing those to our customers. And it was a really great day. The weather was fantastic. We did it in a field in a couple of marquees, and trying to make it more informal, more of a kind of festival feel. It was a really, really great day. Everyone really enjoyed it. Feedback we've had from suppliers and from customers has been truly amazing. So it was a really great day. So who are your core business at the moment? Because obviously during lockdown it was tough going, wasn't it? You launched your click and collect service, which I used, which was fantastic, by the way. I had the world's biggest onion turn up one day, which is quite funny. We all had great hilarity here at the Owen family. Well, being a chef, you should be used to those. Well, it was actually, it made me cry, but there you go. Yeah. What is your core business now? Well, our core business is as it was. I mean, all we did was really lost all the hospitality side of it. So all of those guys shut. So we were down to about 25 to 30% of our business, with most of our fixed costs still there. So it was a pretty difficult time. But we've come through that. We're now much stronger. It is difficult still. Getting stock in is still a problem. But we're holding probably 25% more stock than we would have done pre-COVID. Getting staff, as we mentioned earlier, is still not easy. And I think picking up on Michaela's point, staff training and leadership is absolutely massively important. We lost, unfortunately, 100 people when we went into the pandemic. We brought 100 back on and probably some more. So you're adding sort of that number of people back into a team, and to have that circuit cohesiveness that we had before. We were a Sunday Times 100 best company to work for pre-COVID, and we're now doing training and engaging with our guys to get back to that. So we've actually just picking up with Peter on lead. We've just engaged Stuart to do some online training for us on the principles of lead with all of us middle and senior managers. So we see training as absolutely crucial to the future of our business. Now, obviously, reading the papers, talk about the cost of living going up. Food inflation is a major factor, I would imagine. We read about it all the time. How does a business like yours try to, pass those prices on, or it must be extremely difficult? Well, unfortunately, we don't have any choice. We have to pass those prices on. We were doing, these aren't scientific numbers, but we were looking at some rough numbers the other day, and we estimate I think our top 100 products have increased from 2020 to now by 25%, which is massive. Yeah, especially when the margins in the hospitality trades are quite tight. They are. So what we decided to do was, obviously we wanted to make sure that our service levels are really high, but we took a slightly different approach. So we've employed some more chefs. So we now employ 3 chefs, and we work with our customers to try and menu re-engineer. So how do we bring products in that are either save them money, or are a different alternative, or the other way is to look at how do they bring products in that take chefs out of the kitchen. And this isn't about, chefs losing their jobs. This is just they can't get chefs. So, how do you get a product in that takes far less time in the kitchen, so that they need less people to produce it? It may be slightly more expensive, but the quality will be very consistent, and they don't need as many people to produce some of those products.
Let's be honest, Chris. We talked about this before. The chefs just aren't there.
No.
They can't. Like myself, when I trained to be a chef, I could bone and roll a joint of beef. I could bone and roll a turkey. That doesn't exist anymore, as far as from what I hear, anyway.
Not to the level that you did it. The training was before. No, that doesn't exist. So we have to be more creative in the way that we manage our business and the way that we engage with our customers. So we do work in a more consultative way. We're not just a set of wheels to deliver product to our customers. So that's really where we are engaging with our customers at right now.
Okay, thanks ever so much. And thanks ever so much for the invite, by the way. Hopefully I'll come to the one in September, isn't it? The next one.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks ever so much for that. Pete, let's go over to you then. Can you tell us, please? We've never really crossed paths too much before. So I was really interested when I started to read about the company. Can you tell us about Forge Motor Group, please?
Yeah, so we're a third generation family engineering business. We're CNC precision engineers. We specialize in anything you can machine, ferrous, non-ferrous. We have an engineering arm of the business, and then we have what you might call the Motorsport, which is really just aftermarket car modification. We make a range of parts that we supply worldwide through a dealer network, and also a retail outlet ourselves. And we're just good old Gloucester engineers. There's nothing grand about what we do, but the guys would want me to say, but what we do very, very well, with a lot of attention to detail, and a lot of attention to just doing the right thing within your business with your staff. It's kind of evolve or die, and that's evolve or die in what you're doing with your diversity in your business, and you evolve or die in the way you treat your staff and how you train them, we interact with them, and just making sure your culture is bang on.
Now, you've got different places. You said you've got staff 5 in the USA and 5 in Taiwan. What do these guys do for you?
They're at sales outlets and onward distribution. So everything's made here down the Bristol Road in Gloucester. And then we sea freight that across to New York and down to Orlando, and sea freight out to Taichung in Taiwan to supply our Asian market. So, if you've got our typical car brands would be Volkswagen, Audi, something like that, Porsche, BMW. And as you guys know, that's a global brand. And there are car modification enthusiasts across the globe. So we just distribute that around the world. And thankfully, people find what we do okay and worthy of having.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I deliver Punchline all over the county, and I go into all these different types of business, and people I'm always surprised how many really good engineering companies are on the backs of different business parks, isn't it? And yours is one of those, really, sort of tucked away, you're beaving away, you sell stuff all over the world.
Yeah, we quietly go about our business, and we probably, I don't know, one of the things that we probably ought to do is a little bit, well, certainly during the pandemic and after as we come out of it, is to be shouting a little bit louder about just, the diversity of skills we've got, certainly in the county and in the bloody country as well. And I would agree with Michaela on the training and the need to engage with the kids across the schools, certainly coming out of grammar schools. I'm quite passionate about trying to make connections with some schools to say, hey, actually, you don't have to go to bloody university. There's a load of great opportunity out there. I know certainly a couple of the guys that have gone through Hazelwoods as trainee accountants and apprentices. There's those that have degrees, and there are those that don't. And for us, certainly, I would say 60% of our staff have come in unskilled and unqualified from school, and they are just simply some of the best staff that we've got.
I couldn't agree with you more. Not everybody needs to do a degree to get a good job. We have this debate all the time. I'll come to that when I see you up here. Thanks ever so much for that, man.
No worries.
Really, really interesting, and you're dead right. I'll tell you everything very quickly. You've got to shout as loud as you can, because at the end of the day, it's all about recruitment. people want to work for people that they know about, or companies they've heard about, or companies that have a good reputation. And that leads me very nicely to Hazewoods again. Anyway, I do all these links, you see. Nick, thanks for joining us. I can laugh at my own jokes now, but there we go. You're an insolvency expert at Hazewoods there. Have you seen a rise in insolvencies now? You know, we read about it. It's getting a bit tough out there. I don't even like to talk down the economy, but there is trouble brewing, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think that's you know, most people would have certainly that impression. I think though, to get a good understanding, a broad understanding of where we are, you do just have to go back a little bit and think about, well, what happened over the pandemic, and we're obviously coming out of that now. But just before the pandemic, insolvency levels were at a reasonably historic low. There weren't a big raft of insolvencies happening back when you look back to 2019 into 2020, and then the pandemic happened, and the restrictions that were put in place by the government did actually mean, and obviously the support that the government put in, did mean that the insolvencies actually dropped over that period. So the insolvency sector itself was also, you know, quite adversely affected by the pandemic. But now, as time has gone on, and obviously the support has been withdrawn that's been offered to businesses, and things like the bounce back loans and CBILS loans, that money has obviously dissipated over time with businesses that may have been struggling, and so we're now getting to the point of businesses have tried to trade post the pandemic, and coming to the point where cash flow might be becoming more of an issue, and thinking about, you know, what steps they should and shouldn't be taking. So the most there are insolvency statistics for the country that are published on a monthly basis. They're publicly available to anybody, so you can go on and have a look to see if there's any particular sector you're interested in, to see the numbers for insolvencies. But the point we're at for the last monthly figures, which were March's, is that we're now above where we were in 2019 with the levels of insolvencies, and it's broadly across most industries, but generally the highest areas where there are more insolvencies are the ones you'd expect: hospitality, construction, manufacturing's got a fair few. So you know, Peter would be, wonder whether he's seen any kind of scope in with that. So there's definitely increases, there's definitely inquiries happening. So it's whether that trend continues of insolvencies, typically driven by voluntary liquidations. There were some commentators back during the pandemic that said there was going to be a tsunami of insolvencies. I don't think that certainly hasn't come to transpire, that there's been this big wedge of insolvencies that have come through, but it's very noticeable. The trend is increasing. It's not court-driven insolvencies that are happening that are really driving it. And I think that trend will certainly continue. And obviously, in the news, we see more cost pressures, we see more issues with recruitment, we see you know, inflation being an issue. So that's only going to cause the situations on the pressure on businesses to increase. And there will be those businesses that are not well set and have not evolved, like Peter mentioned, to fit their marketplace, and as such, those businesses unfortunately will go into an insolvency procedure, no doubt.
Have you seen, just very, very quickly, have you seen a rise of pre-packs, companies wrapping up and coming back as something else?
I mean, it's quite a difficult one to say. I mean, pre-packs are, you know, they're quite, you know, badly perceived processes, but a really good example of where, you know, was a pre-pack can work is kind of this McColl's situation with Morrison. So they there was a deal done as the company went into administration to set it back to Morrison's, and the process that happened prior to going to administration actually achieved really good value in that case. And that, in my opinion, from an insolvency professional looking at what happened there, that was a really good outcome for all stakeholders and creditors as a whole. That there's been almost a complete business rescue from that process, but it did require an insolvency administration to happen to get that deal through. I think there was maybe potentially a little bit of apathy that it wasn't going to happen, and it actually took that sledgehammer to really get it done. But there are all types of insolvency are increasing. Whether we're going to see more publicly addressed and pre-packs, call them pre-pack liquidations or pre-pack administrations, with bad publicity, but remains to be seen, I think.
No, thanks ever so much. Fascinating. You're dead right. They saved, at the end of the day, 16,000 jobs. That's which can't be sneezed at. Okay, thanks ever so much. We are running slightly over time, but it's always my fault. And so anyway, let's quickly run through what you guys have picked out in this week's Punchline. So I'm going to move it around a little bit. Chris, what have you picked out in this week's Punch, please?
Well, I picked out your story around the growing meat in factories. I mean, this has been around for a long time. I saw a futurist about 5 or 6 years ago, and his vision of the future was that farms wouldn't be needed anymore. And you allude to the RAU looking into this and the impact on farmers. And his view was that we'd be growing all our own meat. We wouldn't be, in laboratories rather than the fields. We'd be growing all our grains and all the other stuff. Well, we're growing grains in fields, but all our vegetables and everything else would be done hydroponically near towns. And that the price of fuel would be very low because it would just be all solar and wind. So I think his vision of the future is a long way off yet. But you can see where that's leading. I mean, they've been talking about this now. I think it was Memphis Meats who was one of the originators of this idea, going back maybe 5 or 6 years, with some pretty high profile investors at the time. But we didn't seem to have moved forward an awful lot. I mean, still they talked about the first burger was $250,000. I'm not sure we've moved along a huge way, but it's an interesting development. And I think being in the food industry, I think we will see what happens as that goes forward.
No, absolutely fascinating. Thanks for picking that one. Pete, what have you picked out in this week's Punchline, please?
I want to quickly look through the sort of the resurgence of Superdry. Been long time fans of those guys. I think they're very innovative. As a good old Gloucestershire-based company, it's been interesting to sort of see the journey they've been on, and I'm pleased to see them coming back strongly. I like the brand. I think the marketing's on point. When you walk into an airport around the world and you see a Superdry store, I think, good on you. Better Gloucester right there. And I think that's something, again, the county should be proud of. Also, Neil Ricketts down at Versarion, he's doing some amazing stuff with this new technology. And to see it go Umbro, a massive sporting brand like Umbro, taking on board this graphene heat dissipation within their clothing. Talk about evolving tech. I've got to be honest, I don't truly understand what's going on there at the moment, but it's great to see Neil, who I've known for many, many years, and Versarion, again, a great Gloucestershire company, or starting as a great Gloucestershire company with great potential. So there's some good stuff coming out of the county.
Totally. It's funny you should say that. I was actually interviewed Versarion, Neil Ricketts last night, 7 o'clock, about the trading figures that have just come out. And it's looking very good. And you're saying Superdry, you said about that, it's interesting that their sales increases come from their retail outlets rather than their online, which has seen a dip. Anyway, thanks for picking out those two. Michaela, what have you picked out for this week's Punch, please?
Well, I wanted to pick out the cute story, but I'm just going to briefly mention that, and that's the little foal, which was the Suffolk Punch at Cotswold Farm Park. So I was going to go for the cute story, which being an animal lover, but I'm actually going to go for something which I hope the chaps here don't think predictable, but I'm really pleased that you've given a shout out to Matthew Clayton at Willans, who is going to be offering a webinar on menopause in the workplace. Now, I know it might be ever so predictable because here I am, the female, but I think, again, this is about actually staff having that social awareness, isn't it, of what's impacting people at work. And I'm really pleased that it's Matthew doing it and not a lady. I noticed on one of your sort of front cover headlines, there was another Mariella Frostrup sort of banner running through. But I think there's, the age of sort of 45 to 55-year-olds. Hey, I fall in that category. I'm just staying in it. And it's a thing, isn't it? And we've all got to be very aware, because actually flexible working could really help a lot of people that would otherwise struggle. And actually flexible working is obviously helping the other sort of side of diversity too, with people who might have mobility issues. But I'm linking it back to a story that comes in the paper today. So, hey, it also says that if women don't take HRT, they actually run the risk of, there's a higher risk of heart disease, because who knew that actually it said that it's found that HRT was associated with increases in good HDL cholesterol and reduction in bad LDL cholesterol. And I think it is that stigma, isn't it, that just needs to be opened up now. And it links very well with Dame Deborah James. She's trying to reduce the stigma of bowel cancer by talking about poo openly. So, hey, let's have the other conversations.
No, totally agree.
Sorry if I'm being predictable, but
not at all. I think it's a really interesting debate, and I think one of the things that has come out about all the and being a male colleague here on the panel is that a lot more guys are learning about it, and we understand it. We've got our wives going through it.
Women, we don't know about it either, and it's been an education watching some of these programs and thinking, wow, that sounds like me. Just this awareness, because it is one of those mysterious things that, hey, what's going to happen? And it's a real education, isn't it?
And the bowel cancer thing, as my brother died of bowel cancer, and he had blood coming out of his bottom and didn't bloody do anything about it. It goes to show that if you do, get bloody checked out. Anyway, let's move on to Nick. Nick, what have you picked out this week's Punch, please?
Okay, so this is we've got a slight personal tinge on it. So before I was an accountant, my first job when I was 14 was working putting out the fruit and veg in Sainsbury's in Barnwood. So the story that I've picked out is to do with Tesco trialing new store space. So we all have our perceptions of the supermarket, and they used to have a meat and fish counter and the other counters at the back, the deli and the butchers and everything else. But of course, a lot of those have gone now, disappeared, because they're no longer what they want to do. And the stores have obviously got the spare space in it. And also it turns out people aren't buying their electronics from supermarkets anymore, because they're so easy to buy online, and obviously you've got the reduced price and ability to shop around and everything. So Tesco's are testing some flexible office space in one of their London branches, and turning that into a place you can potentially pitch up and go to work with meeting rooms and everything else. And it just fascinated me, the idea of being able to flexible work in a supermarket, probably pop out, get your food for lunch, whether they're off a kitchen is another thing, and you cook yourself up for lunch and then carry on your working day. But it just goes to show, Peter mentioned earlier, businesses quite often evolve or die, and this is a great example of a business, Tesco's, who are quite often forward-looking, and they're just looking to evolve what they've got and their space. Obviously, they can't reduce the building space, but how better can they use that? And looking to have it as for flexible working, and who knows, maybe it will really work out, because I guess what they're going to do is just make it quite publicly available, and therefore supermarkets are in good locations. So who knows? Maybe it'll work out and be rolled out across the country.
No, it's good. We'll watch that one very, very carefully. Thanks ever so much for picking out those stories. The story that caught my eye actually this week, it's a little bit personal, was Stroud Brewery. I did an interview with Hugh Fernley Whittenstall. He's a chef, he's an author, he's a journalist, he's a presenter, he's an entrepreneur. I'd like to think I'm the cheaper version of him. But what a really nice guy, and it was great to be down in Stroud Brewery. Great guys, Greg, Billy. I don't know if you know him, don't know if you met him, but goodness, one of those business leaders that is inspirational as well on the organic front. Anyway, a huge thanks to our sponsors. Huge thanks to you guys. Thanks ever so much for joining the show. And please don't forget, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining this week's Punchline. and very big thanks to my business breakfast briefings experts. Cheers to next week. Thank you. Bye.